One of the most difficult things about doing a literature review is going through all the information and trying to make sense of it. And so in this video, I'll outline a couple of different tips and tricks that I have in order to help you do this. For this first one, we're talking about concept maps. And many of you have probably come across the idea of concept maps. These are particularly good at kind of helping you spatially organize information. And I'm just going to kind of read out some useful information that I found in this paper here. Conducting a systematic literature review is an essential research activity in ensuring a good piece of research. However, students who are new to this research activity may find the activity highly challenging. Students are overwhelmed by the vast amount of information they encounter and often do not know how to identify and organize the information to be of use in their research. Yeah, so many of you might identify with this. By using concept maps, the creation of a literature review becomes less daunting and more bearable throughout. Concept mappings are useful for two purposes. Mainly, that is, to summarize the information obtained in an individual source and to synthesize information obtained from different sources. So I find this incredibly useful if I'm starting off a new paper, possibly even a new line of research. I have to review the literature, and one of the challenges there is to kind of synthesize not only what's done in individual papers, but also try to get the lie of the land, as it were. And so sketching out concept maps can be a really good, useful way of doing this. Now, you can do this using online tools, and there might be an advantage of doing that because you can shift things around in space, and so it doesn't matter if you make mistakes and so on. But I would say I think there's a benefit as well from just getting a big pad of paper, just kind of quickly sketching things out. I personally find this really useful. The second thing that we're going to talk about is the idea of a timeline. And the text here is probably too small to read. It's taken from this paper that Raz and Boole, 2006. Now, I think that creating a timeline is an extraordinarily useful activity. Whether you actually end up creating a figure like they have done in this paper, I think is neither here nor there. You don't very often see these things, to be honest. So this was taken from a review paper. Nevertheless, I think that constructing a timeline from your literature review is a very useful way of going about things. So you are forced to basically accumulate all the information that you're reading through along a one-dimensional axis of time. And so this is one way of imposing structure upon the chaos that is the literature. You could go fancy, you could do it on a computer, but equally you can buy big rolls of paper and put this on your walls, all the way around your wall, and do the longest timeline ever and look like a mad person. But either way, I think you could track the rise and fall of different ideas. You could use different colors for different kind of hypotheses or schools of thought, and you could kind of make it clear the contribution that individual people have. You could even elaborate this thing into almost an evolutionary tree going from left to right. So you can trace back the origins of different schools of thought, perhaps. This could be a really useful activity to do if you're trying to understand a literature over a reasonably large time frame. The third idea I want to talk about here is this notion of an evidence chart. And I think that this is a really interesting idea. I don't think that many people know about this. I came across a blog post on Alex Holcombe's website, and I really like this idea. So in this approach, you would essentially set up a spreadsheet where each column might represent a different hypothesis. So this could be a series of competing hypotheses about how something works. And each row would represent a paper or a particular kind of line of evidence, as it were. And the question might be, well, what should we believe? Which of these hypotheses in the columns should we assign most or least credibility to? And so you could use an approach like this in a spreadsheet to write notes in order to kind of understand how different pieces of evidence contribute to hypotheses. Maybe they strengthen a particular hypothesis and weaken others, and so on. You could also take a kind of quantitative approach. So you could assign numbers. You can come up with some kind of scheme to represent evidence that kind of is confirmatory or disconfirmatory to different hypotheses. Now, I think that there used to be a website which allows you to do this type of thing, but I think that it's fallen into disrepair. I think that's a shame because I think this is a really good idea. My suspicion, though, is that this kind of idea has essentially been overtaken by the popularity of systematic reviews or meta-analyses. Nevertheless, I think that this is still a very interesting thing to do. So there are 3 different ways of trying to impose structure on the chaos of the literature. I hope that was useful.